which flat trailer plug do you need? Is it the 4-way flat or the 5-way flat? Well, you're in luck. We're going to cover both of these today, and we're going to talk about the different applications that these are used for, and we're going to get right into it. So we have several different flat plugs with us. I'm going to cover the differences between them, some of the ones that we keep in stock, some of the ones that I like, some of the ones that I don't like at all. So the first we're going to cover is the one that goes on your tow vehicle. They still put these, believe it or not, sometimes they're molded into the 7-way. Sometimes if you just have a basic towing package with no brake controller, they're going to have this. I will say the 4-way flat is kind of going away. Most of the boat trailers today and even the utilities are coming with the 7-way, even though they're only using 4 of the 7 wires. But we still get some trailers in with 4-ways, and there's still some older vehicles out there that have the 4-way. The way you tell if it's the truck side or the trailer side is the exposure. So if you have one prong exposed, that is the ground. This goes on the tow vehicle. If it looks like this goes on to the trailer. We do see some vehicles that come in that someone has wired this onto the vehicle. It will work, except for these are exposed, and if they touch the bumper, they're going to short out and pop your fuse either on your running lights or one of your turn signals. So make sure that you do have the encased 4 flat or 5 flat that we'll get to later in the video. So with that being said, we're not going to talk too much about the truck. I'm going to throw that one away. Most everything I believe we're going to show today, it should be able to have a link in the description below. So if you're needing some of these parts, or if you watch this video and say, hey, I'm needing that, hopefully I can leave you a link to so you can find the parts that you need. So this one here is from one of my main suppliers. This is a 4-way flat, and I want you to notice something. Look at how long the wires are on that. This is worthless. I've griped about this for years. So if you have one like this, if this is all you can find, you're going to have to extend that out, and we'll show that here in a little bit. I hate this. I just kept a few around just so I can show a description of it. What we use today that I found is a molded plug. I like this a lot better. It's more weather resistant, has a nice insulation cover on it, nice head on the plug. It's got a long enough wire that you can wire it into the trailer and have plenty of lead left. This right here, you got to make 2 sets of connections on here, so that's just one extra set of connections that potentially could fail. So I do not recommend this unless you're in a bind, or if that's the only thing you can get from your supplier, like I did for years. So I no longer buy this one. These have been sitting on the shelf for a while. I knocked the dust off this one so it wasn't so ugly. Something else you can buy, I don't sell a lot of wiring kits. I'm not a big fan of the prefab kits. A lot of times they use really cheap aluminum wire, really thin gauge wire in them. But for certain trailers like the one I'm going to show you today, and especially on some boat trailers, they make a wiring kit that's pretty useful, but it's got some extra wires on it, and sometimes it's confusing for some of our customers. They'll buy it and they don't understand what the other wire's for. So we're going to cover that one first. If you look on this trailer, let me show you. If you can see, I've got 2 sets of wires. So I have a green and a brown and a yellow and a brown. And that's the question that hangs people up sometimes. Well, what's the extra brown for? Well, they're both for running lights. And what this simply does on this trailer is wired like a boat trailer. Most of your boat trailers have wiring running down the right and left-hand side of the trailer. And so they're not using a jumper to come across to light up the running lights. They put a running light down the right side, a running light wire down the left-hand side along with the left turn and right turn. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's pretty handy. In this wiring kit I have here that I have bundled up, that's the way this is made. So this is a 4-way flat, and this is for a full trailer. So you'll notice on it, you would split these. Let me get the ground out of the way. So it's got a green and brown and a yellow and brown, and they are molded together. But you can split this in half all the way down, and you would run the green side down the right-hand side for right turn, and the yellow and brown down the left-hand side for left turn. And it does come with a ground. This ground is long enough in order to ground it directly to the trailer. And if you're using a boat trailer or if you're using a utility, you want to make sure you're grounded to the frame. Don't rely on grounding through the ball. Back in the old days when the ball was attached directly to the bumper, they grounded pretty well. But now since you have receiver hitches with a slide-in stinger, there's some slack in that. They get rust, they get dirty, and they don't ground through the ball very well. So make sure you have a good chassis ground on that through the wiring, coming out of the wiring of your plug. This would do most 16-foot trailers or short trailer. This is pretty inexpensive. It's pretty decent wire for a kit. It is copper wire, not the cheap aluminum, so it won't corrode as quickly as aluminum. A lot of times with aluminum, once you get a nick in the insulation, it will corrode out pretty hard. So I do recommend this kit if you're looking for a kit style to go down the right hand and left hand side like we're going to do on this trailer. This will give you some extra wire left over if you do need to make a jumper, if you have the 3 lights on the back, or if maybe you're adding some side marker lights, it gives you a little extra wire in order to do that. So that's the 2 that I prefer. I do not prefer this one just because the wiring is too short. If you do have to use this, you're going to have to make a connection here, then again the connection on your trailer. I recommend covering this with some type of wiring loom. You can use the cheap plastic wiring loom. It's better than nothing. If you can find the woven loom, it does a little bit better. And that's not so much for looks. I don't ever put wiring loom on necessarily for looks. It is to kind of help the sun keep off of it. It will eat the wiring loom up before it eats the wires up in here. You're going to have to replace the loom from time to time. But if you do put the wiring loom on, I'm going to show you how I prefer to put it on. I'm going to grab some electrical tape. So you can sit, this is split loom too, by the way. So you can simply just feed the wires in here. Probably won't be able to do it since we're on camera today. So you can feed them in like that, and there's nothing wrong with that except for it's loose. It's gonna come apart. So how I prefer to do it, just pull that back, take your electrical tape, get as close to the top as you can, wrap you several turns around that, then pull the tape out, leave a little bit of a tail there, slip the wiring loom back over, feeding the tape through the slit in the loom, and then take the tape and wrap it around. If you ever notice wiring underneath the hood of your vehicle from the factory, that's how it's going to be done. It looks nice and it's not going to pull off as easy. You can tape that hard, pull it tight. It'll give you a little better seal to keep junk out of there. And you can do that several ways down. If it's a long, you can do the same thing in the middle just to keep it from shrinking up and to keep the wiring loom on there. And like I said, again, it does make it look better, yes, but the main focus is to keep the sun off the insulation so these don't dry rot and corrode them prematurely. So that's how I prefer to do that. So that is for the 4-way application. So on a 4-way plug, and we'll do this is only good enough to do for videos. So on a 4-way plug, most important wire. If the ground is not hooked up, it don't matter what these are going to be. They're not going to work unless you're grounded through the ball, and that's only going to be sometimes. So make sure you do have a ground to the frame with a screw or a bolt, and make sure if you're using a self-tapping screw or a bolt, make sure you clean any rust or paint off the frame when you make that connection, and put that on first. Your green wire, of course, is for your right turn. Your yellow is for your left turn. And your brown wire is for your running lights or marker lights or clearance lights, depending on what part of the country you're from. They're all the same thing, but they're called 3 different things depending on where you come from. The other question I get a lot is, on the trailer, how do you know which wire goes to which? On this trailer here, we do have a yellow, a brown, and a green and a brown. I know on this trailer, because I've already tested it, the yellow is left, the green is for right. Sometimes we get these trailers in that has all red wires, has red and brown, red and black, black and white. If you have that scenario, I can't tell you over the phone if you were to call me. I can't guess at it. You're going to have to take a battery charger or a little battery. You're going to ground to the trailer and then test each wire individually. If you have your ground wire off your battery charger or your battery hooked to the trailer and you touch one of these wires and it makes a huge spark, that is your ground wire. If it makes a little tiny spark, that just means it's a load. That means you have a light or something hooked to it. So say if you were to test this yellow wire and the left turn comes on, then the trailer's wired correctly, yellow is left turn. Say if you were to test this and the right turn comes on, then the trailer's wired backwards. Happens all the time. Just because there is a wiring code doesn't mean that it's always followed. When it comes to this side of it, this never deviates. It's always right turn, left turn, tail marker clearance, and ground. Always stays the same. If you're rewiring your trailer, try to do it to wiring color code. Just in case you have to take it in somewhere, if you sell the trailer, just to keep somebody else from having to pull their hair out We still actually have a few manufacturers in our state. I won't name them. I won't name the states they're from. They use the wiring on the 6-way plug, which we're not going to cover today. They use a wiring code that hasn't been used probably, we're bumping 30 years now, but they still use that, and it does cause some problems for the consumer. They have some brake lockup and a few things like that. There's certain things you have to do. So while we're talking about the 4-way, let's talk about something else, because a lot of the newer vehicles, probably what you own today, if you own anything that's 10 years or newer, is going to have a 7-way plug. So if your truck or your Suburban, whatever you're pulling with, does not have the 4-way flat on there, you can get an adapter. You can get a 7 to 4-way adapter. Now the question I get all the time, why is there no pin in the middle? It's because you don't need a pin in the middle. You only need 4 wires. If you look in there, there's 4 brass connectors, your right turn, left turn, tail marker, and your ground wire. That's all you need. This is non-functional for a flat. You don't need a brake wire, and you don't need a hot wire. The center pin is always and only for reverse. There's some people argue that that's for brakes. It is not for brakes. It is for reverse only, mostly in the RV industry, but it's also used in the boat trailer industry that we're going to cover here shortly. So that is the 4-way flat. Very simple, in my opinion. This will be the easiest plug. Used to be one of the most common plugs. Anymore, like I said, it's kind of going away, but you're still going to find it. So now let's move on. This is a question I get, and I think I get this question because when people go into a big box store or even some of the trailer parts stores, they'll see either a 5-way flat or they'll see a 7 to 5-way adapter, and they'll say, hey, do I need the 5-wire? The only time you're going to need this 5-wire, and what this is really for the marine industry, for boat trailers. So you have your white wire for your ground, you have your yellow for your left turn, you have your brown for your tail marker, you have your brown for your tail marker, your green for your right turn, and then you have the blue wire. And the blue wire is for brakes, but not really. It keeps the brakes from working on a boat trailer, believe it or not. So what this blue wire is for, this is actually a reverse wire. And what this does, if you have a boat trailer that has one of these handy dandy little solenoids in it that goes on your actuator, like we covered in our last video, I believe it was our last video. If you haven't watched that, we'll leave a link in the description somewhere around here, maybe there, talking about boat trailer brakes. What this does is when you put the truck in reverse, it sends a signal through this blue wire that attaches to what is sometimes blue on this, and this keeps the brakes from locking up when you're backing into your down the boat ramp, or if you're backing into your spot at home. When you get done, it just keeps the brakes from locking up in reverse. Not all boat trailers use these. Some have free backing brakes that will not lock up in the reverse, but this is very popular. I'd say on most new boat trailers it's going to have this, and that is the purpose for the 5-wire. Here is the issue with that though. So if you have this on your tow vehicle and your boat has this, it will work. It will hook together most of the time. There are some of the units that have a secondary outer mold on them this will not fit into. It does expose that wire. Everything is going to work. The only thing that's not going to work is the reverse mechanism on here. So when you go to back it up, it is going to try to lock up the brakes. There's one trick you can use that if you're in a bind and you don't have the proper connection, you can use this. If you got a ground through the ball, which a lot of times you can't depend on, like we just covered earlier in the video, this will work. You can unplug this, maybe. You can flip it around, and you're going to put that in there. And now we have the ground exposed, so the ground is not going to work. It's not going to hurt anything, but it may make this not work unless you have a ground through the trailer. Once you have, you see that brown wire, which is your running or clearance light, is now in line with the blue light. So that what that would allow you to do if you need to back down the boat ramp in your spot, if you turn your headlights on, it will power this wire here, and it will activate the solenoid to keep the brakes from locking up in reverse. So this can be done. I know a lot of customers, this is what they use. They don't have a true 5-way connection. This will get you by, but I'm going to recommend that if you have this on your tow vehicle, replace this with a 5. That way you don't have to mess with, you're going to forget to unhook it. You're going to forget to hook it up. So just put the correct plug on there, but it can get you by if you need to. Like I said, just turn it around backwards, hook up the running light to the blue, activate that reverse wire with your headlight switch, and that will get you down the boat ramp, and it'll get you backed in when you get home. So that's all this is used for. If you have this on a utility trailer, more than likely it's something they just stuck on there. But if you do have the 7-pin on your vehicle and you use an adapter, you could, in theory, utilize this if you wanted to put a reverse light on your utility trailer. That is completely feasible. There's people that do it. I've done it. Normally, if we're gonna go to all that trouble, we're just gonna convert the utility trailer to a 7-way plug, and you can check out our 7-way trailer plug video on that will cover all the different pins on there, what wires go to what, show you how to wire it. You can do that. So while we're talking about that, let's talk about this adapter. This is a 7 to 5-way, and if you notice on this one, compared to this one, there is a center prong in there. That center prong is for what? It is for reverse. It is to activate the solenoid for the actuator so that your brakes don't lock up. I will tell you, I'm not a big fan of adapters. I sell them every day. We offer them to our customers. If you have the same trailer you're gonna be towing all the time with the same tow vehicle, just change out the plug. So if you have a 4-way on the front, or if you have a 5-way on the front, just change that out. Even though you're not gonna use all the wires in this, just put you a regular 7-way plug, put that in, and there's no adapter. Because the problem is you have a connection here, then you have a connection here as well. So I recommend not using adapters unless you just want to. If you keep them clean, if they get worn out, just replace it. They're not super expensive. We'll leave a link below, but try to buy you a good one. This is a Pollock brand. This is pretty much all I try to sell in 7-way product. They just hold up well. You know, one of the gripes we get, well, that thing is plastic. You're absolutely right. It is plastic. They do make a metal one. It's a metal housing. It's the same internals on it. What I noticed on the metal housing, it is a zinc or galvanized coated. It gets cruddy and corroded and gets stuck in the plug. I prefer this one. I think they last just as good as the metal housing myself. So that's just customer preference. This is for your tow vehicle. Always needs to be protected. Don't need to have any exposed prongs except for the ground. If it does have exposed prongs, get the dude replaced. You're gonna blow the fuses out of the fuse block. Then you're gonna go hook up to your trailer. It ain't gonna work. You're not gonna have a test light unless you see our video on test lights, and you can get one of those in the link. And for y'all guys that think I'm advertising too much, I'm not trying to advertise too much. I'm just trying to get you the right tools so you can save yourself some time and money. Because you know as well as I do, when you break down, when you have issue, there ain't gonna be no shop open nowhere. It's gonna be in the middle of the night or gonna be on the weekend. So just get yourself down the road. So there's that. Remember, if this is all you can get, do the best you can. You're going to have to put an extension on there. But if you do put an extension on there, use the heat shrink connectors. Use the blue heat shrink. You can get these. You can pick them up automotive parts stores. You can pick them up online. You can find them just about anywhere. Crimp that dude on, especially if it's going to be on a boat trailer to keep from getting wet. You only need the 5-way more likely if you're in the boat trailer world. And it is boat trailer season, as we mentioned in the last video. And this is for your reverse wire only. Did I miss anything? Hopefully I said all my words correctly. Sometimes I get my words backwards. Sometimes I call these male instead of female and female instead of male. If I said something wrong in there, just leave it in the comments below. It gives me something to laugh about, puts me in a good mood. It's okay, just let me have it. Hope that answers any questions you've got. I like the 4-way because it's simple, but if you have a trailer that's got brakes and all that kind of stuff on it, the 4-way is not gonna do you. You're gonna need at least a 6-way, which we'll cover in a video. 6-way is pretty much gone. There's just a few people that still use a 6-way. Some of our farmers still use the 6-way, and there's nothing wrong with it. I actually like the 6-way plug. It's just not used much anymore, so we pretty much went all to 7-way. And remember, the most important wire, the ground wire, especially on a boat trailer. Make sure you have a ground hooked to the chassis of the boat trailer. Put one up front. If you need to, put another one on the back. You can't have too many grounds, but if you don't have a good ground, you're not gonna have any lights. I can guarantee it.